Hi, Zizaran here with another Path of Exile University video, and I am joined by the amazing build creator Nugiyen, who's another Path of Exile streamer. And if you're not familiar with him, go subscribe and check his content out as well. How are you, Nugi?
Awake?
Awake? That's good. That's better than being asleep,
That
especially.
is definitely good.
Yes.
I was afraid of oversleeping because I kind of went to bed late.
All right. What'd you get up to?
So, what?
What'd you get up to?
I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, okay. Soda?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. But yeah, we are here to talk about making a build, like crafting a build. So like a lot of people get very, very stuck into following guides by other people and aren't really sure about how to start or how to go about creating their own build. So that is what today's topic is going to be about. It's going to be around 1 hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour, 50 minutes, thereabouts.
Damn.
Yep. You think we can do it?
I think we can do it.
I think we can do it too. So, Nugi, do you want to start us off on like what are the first things you need to think about when creating a build?
Well, okay, so there's in terms of just creating the build, I kind of have a thing where I started thinking a lot more in like three things: offense, defense, mobility, and I try and like fill in all the gaps. So,
Would you say defense is the most important?
yeah, you got to build defense. It's very important. I don't know which is the most important. The most important is making sure that your build fits the purpose that it's supposed to fill. Right? So if you're in a league start, and there's, let's say, I think that the most important thing is to identify what it is you want your build to do, and then just go from there. I mean, this is mostly for people who have played more than one build, I would say.
Yeah.
So if you need to like make a league starter or mid league, or if you want to do some bossing or delving or whatever you want to do, say for instance like this next league, right? Or let's say that we're just going to league with, say, no danger, no
like
danger.
Harvest.
Yeah, sort of, because there wasn't really any danger, right? In a league like that, generally what you can do is you can skip all the defense to start with, because the league itself doesn't really give you anything, so you can just go fast and lots of damage. So that's like it all depends on what it is that like what it is we want to like build it for.
Yeah. Like some quick examples on that for those who are new, there's been like some leagues that are very, very dangerous early.
Yeah.
Like Betrayal, very, very dangerous early. Delirium, even like Talisman. Like there has been like quite a lot of leagues. Generally, league mechanics are very dangerous early, and Legion as well. But then you have, for example, Harvest, where the only dangerous thing would be the tier 2 blue seeds.
Let's see here.
So, let's talk a little bit about if you're a new player and you've never made a build on your own. Like,
Right, that's
how would
probably a
you
good place to
start? Yeah, how would you start?
would
Because
I
I would
start?
still recommend, like Nugi just said, to follow a guide on like your first, maybe second build, so that you know you're building your personal economy and you have some stuff to play around with.
Yeah. I think early on you should not be too worried of. I think the first thing to building builds is don't be afraid of failure, because pretty much all your early builds will somewhat suck unless you're following a guide to the letter. However, one thing to note about following a guide to the letter is that you're going to learn very little. You will experience that your build is gonna feel strong. It's gonna do what you expect it to do because the build said what it's gonna do, and you're gonna just look at what's happening on the screen and then say, yeah, it's doing that. You don't really know if it's doing that because you haven't experienced anything else. You just go by what you think. So if it says, oh, this is clearing fast, oh yeah, it is clearing fast, oh, that's great. But the point of reference is whatever the guy said that the build is gonna do. So I think it's a good thing to just explore a bit, be a little bit creative, and you know, play around with things that you would like to do.
Yeah.
Rather than what the build guide said that you should do. So let's say that you are a player who likes to run fast with a bow and shoot things and, at the end of the screen, well, then try making one of those. Try finding a build that does that for you.
I would say the most important starting step in Path of Exile now sort of ends up being a third party called Path of Building. If you aren't familiar with Path of Building already, it's can seem a little overwhelming at first. We'll switch to a different screen here. But Path of Building is a massive tool for making builds because it does give you a point of reference that you can load in other people's build guides, see what kind of damage they're getting, see what kind of life they're getting, so that you have some sort of reference for what numbers you should be expecting out of your build. Another website, so again, you're seeing the trend here of more third-party things that can be useful, but on PoE Ninja, you can go and maybe I can bring that up so I can show, but you can bring up other people's builds and see what the most investment. So if you're looking for something more budget, honestly, looking at what people are doing on solo self-found hardcore or hardcore trade league is going to give you a better indication of maybe budget builds. Whereas on trade league softcore, you're going to see people with a mirror or 5 investment at the top there.
Almost any top tier build on solo self-found will be a budget, very strong build for any trade league.
Yeah.
Because solo self-found players generally have that, they need to be able to make the build work. You need to be able to have the things, and since you're on solo self-found, you go for the things that are more easily accessible. And if it's more easily accessible in solo self-found, then in a trade league, it becomes basically free.
Yep. So here on the screen now, I'm showing off PoE Ninja, and we've searched for for example, Volatile Dead as a 5-link or more, and then we click on DPS to sort it by DPS. Then you could look through some of the characters here, and you'll get some sort of frame of reference of what Volatile Dead should look like. You don't even have to look at the build itself. You can play around with it, but you could at least look at the numbers that they are getting, and then maybe try to learn a little bit from that. But this is from Hardcore Harvest. If we switch over to Harvest now, you can see that the damage numbers have gone all the way up to 8 million somehow and 2.9 billion. So there's especially as a new player, it might be more achievable for you because these are already great numbers. This is enough to kill Uber Elder and Awakener and stuff like that. But you can see the difference there when people start using mirrored items. It is magnitudes higher. So these people are just blowing bosses away.
Also, this is a danger of using PoE Ninja for anything in terms of DPS, or especially the damage one. People will they will cheat on the sheet. They will do everything. They'll put every gem in there that it's going to think that it's being used all the time for damage.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
The PoE Ninja will assume that it has all the cooldowns, all the vol skills, all the things that normally is only up maybe 5-10% of the time are up 100% of the time. So don't be fooled by inflated numbers on PoE Ninja.
Yeah,
it can make your build look very bad, even though your build might be just as good as someone else's.
Yeah,
so just keep that in mind.
And again, that's also why we were suggesting the hardcore SSF, because then it's gonna be more realistic builds and it's a lot more achievable numbers, and less about competing for the highest damage.
Yeah, because I think there is a meta on PoE Ninja that people will actually try on, especially software, to have the highest number, to be listed highest.
Yeah. So when you're making a build, and you've gotten a little bit overweight, and this is good for your existing characters too, for showing where to go. But Path of Building has something called Show Node Power, and that'll be connected to your skills. So if I put in maybe Arc and some support gems, for example, and it'll also help you auto-select what is going to be the highest damage. But let's say that this is whatever. That doesn't matter.
Well, with PoB, let's start with the beginning. How do you find your build?
I would argue that node power is how you can start your build, though.
Oh, I guess it depends on what level. Yeah, okay. I guess there's the if you haven't done anything yet, you can start exploring with it,
Yeah.
and
I
then it's
just
pretty nice. Yeah, we can start there.
Yeah, so what node power does and how it works is it will like use your existing skills and things like that, and it'll also, if you're doing crit based things, it'll change a little bit. But let's see, let me just throw on there, that should be fine. But yeah, it'll show different node powers. So for example, red will mean that these are things that will give you a big damage increase. So probably the biggest thing on the skill tree right now, well, you see like elemental overload. Yeah, power per point. Oh, there.
Okay, so one thing when if you're a new player starting out, the first thing you do is click power nodes, and you think, oh, these are the strongest nodes. These are the strongest nodes for basically a blank character with no
Yeah.
gear, no passive node selected, no ascendancy, no nothing. So it's just what it's going to give you is it's going to give you the whatever has the highest like increased damage number. So I would say maybe like put in a build for like flesh in a build first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's a little bit more for like maxing out and fine tuning your build. But
Yeah,
the way the power nodes will work is that they'll have like a higher color based on how much damage they are. And then you'll
yeah.
have the blue ones will be the best ones for defense. And then with the power per point as well, it'll highlight things that are closer and less like travel nodes for you. But yeah.
Another thing I would probably also have you take the boss one as well.
No.
Like just general settings. So before you start clicking power nodes, you should probably click like the general things as well first. So you generally you just want to put it to like either Shaper or Cyrus.
Yeah. So bosses have different resists you can see by
Yes.
hovering over here. But for example, a physical damage build will have like, well, enemies resisted a lot less, or chaos damage as well in some cases, than elemental. Like a lot of bosses you'll see have a lot of very, very heavy elemental res. Same with like all these things here. It's important to not click too many things in the configuration.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll see guides from like the Path of Exile forums and stuff. They have like, and this is using the community branch, which can help calculate shocks and stuff. But you'll see a lot of people have like, oh, I have 50% shock, I have frenzy charges, I have onslaught, and a lot of things that they might not have. So you do have to think about like, what are the realistic things that I'm actually going to have on? And then once you've like ticked everything, and it's like an actual real simulation of what your character's gonna have, that's when you do get like more benefit out of it.
Oh, sorry, just a bit of
No, it's all right. So another problem is literally like you're opening up POB, and where do you start, right? And
Yes.
and making a build from scratch when you have very little experience is incredibly hard because you're not really sure about like what are the common nodes. But even just by following a couple of build guides from like Nugiyen and other creators, you'll like after a while notice that there are some like trends, right? Like quite a lot of builds will pick up like Constitution down here on the Silent Life wheel, and it depends a little bit on your base class. But you'll sort of like notice the most efficient, the clusters and the trends to take. Crit builds will, a lot of them will have, for example, Throat Seeker and a lot of the crit nodes up there. So that's like some patterns to look out for.
Mm-hmm. I think. What was it? I had like fuck. I lost my train of thought. What was it?
And yeah, they do have. Let's see. I can't remember how to find the heat map in PoE Ninja, but you can basically see.
Yes.
There is like
That was good.
there's like some nodes that are basically never taken. I'm just not going to link the actual heat map because I don't use PoE Ninja enough. Just under tools. That would be nice to show. Let's see. I can't see it. Oh, show passive tree heat map. I see it. There.
I think the heat map gives a general good overview of where you should be on the tree.
Yeah. So this is the heat map. I think this is for every character, right? This isn't even build
Yeah.
specific when we haven't clicked anything.
Yeah.
And then I think it'll still do a heat map for example, cyclone builds. So here you see the heat map of people using cyclones. You'll probably see some people are duelists, different classes like that. But you do get a lot of information from the heat map here. And then, like right now, this is just the heat map of
Should
everything.
probably pick ascendancy.
Yeah, we could do.
Like if you're picking anything of this, you have to kind of pick an ascendancy.
Right. But
Otherwise, the heat map
even
is...
without picking anything, you'll see that there are so many nodes that are completely cold and just like barely ever picked for any builds. But yeah, let's go into, for
The
example,
problem with if you pick
Necromancer,
heat map,
Volatile Dead.
if you pick heat map, it's just gonna pick all the travel nodes
Yeah.
because it's the most common between everything.
Mhm.
So this here makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so if we look now we're looking at a Necromancer, Volatile Dead, right? That's a very, very popular meta build right now. See that this is like super red because nearly everybody takes Spiritual Aid on this build. As a quick example of why, that's because Spiritual Aid makes minion damage just become generic damage, and you're getting so much free generic damage just based on your pathing and your ascendancy. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
And since everything, most people play Spellsinger here as well, which is why you can see that the aura nodes are picked to lower the mana reservation, so that you can fit out of everything.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can talk about Volatile Dead Spellsinger or just Volatile Dead overall.
Yeah.
If you look, I think the heat map here is will actually show pretty much the meta build. Like the heat map basically shows this is the variation most people run, maybe except for... Do people run the whole right side as well?
I usually don't run the right side, but I'm on hardcore,
Yeah,
so I think it would be different based on the league.
So I think basically what you can do here is that there are two parts of the tree you should be looking at. So there is right side is softcore and left side down pretty much is hardcore. And so one of the reasons for this is that if you stay up top, you'll get more damage.
Yeah.
Straight up. If you go down, you'll get more defenses, more life, and you'll get permanent spammable enduring cry. So those are like the main two differences. So I think actually for a new player as well, this is this shows very well what where you should be on the tree. And the thing about where you should be in the tree, I would say if you're a new player, don't travel too far. Try and find the most powerful nodes that are close to you, close around your starting point. Because just having more strong nodes is generally just good. You might think, oh, but I should go all the way down to the bottom, and you can see the very bottom node, there's a keystone down there that people take. That's the instant war cries. However, if you are just beelining it there to instant war cries in a build like this, you are going to find yourself in the mid game coming very short on damage because you've traveled so far. And every time you travel without actually gaining something for it, you're going to make your life harder. So there needs to be a point of where you capitalize on all this travel.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
See. And then I think like that's enough that we can cover about the Volatile Dead. But I think something else a lot of people are going to be asking about is, for example, deciding when do you go life and when do you do CI? Because a lot of builds, you do have the option between both. And generally, you're always going to be playing a life build early on. There's like no scenario where you really level as CI. That's like something people like Carve do as a challenge mode, like how early can I go CI? So normally people will go life, gather gear, and then go CI or Chaos Inoculation. Later, like anywhere from as early as 70 to like 80, 90 is like very common, especially on like your starting characters.
Actually, the whole level thing as well. I think if you want to make a new, like, manage your expectations, I think is something that is really crucial for anyone trying to make a build.
Yeah, don't do 123 points.
No, don't.
You're not getting there.
I think the best thing you can do if you want to make a successful build is planning ahead, right? So finding guides where there is, and this is something Sis does very well in his guides, it's actually making sure that you plan leveling, the mid game, the end game. and even the leveling in the mid game and the end game can be segmented even further into steps in that scenario, right? So when you're leveling, maybe you're picking volatile dead, right? So the first thing you're gonna think, okay, where do I get volatile dead? And then you'll look at the gem level, you're like, shit, that's 28. It's 28, right?
12.
Is it 12?
Yeah.
Oh, what?
It
Oh,
feels like it
cremation.
should be a 28 skill.
Right. Okay, let's say you want to do cremation then. That's 28.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, oh shit, how do I make it to 28? Well, you could use volatile dead, for instance, at 12. I don't know if that's the best, but there basically you're gonna find yourself in a situation where the build you want to do is actually not accessible prior to like reaching a certain level, so you have to do something in between. So it's a good idea to plan out, okay, what do I actually do in between? What spell or attack, or how am I going to manage to get from like that stage? Because you don't really want to feel that you've chosen the wrong build before you even get the build started. And I think a lot of people actually end up like that, where they will have this grand idea of a build, they will start making it, and they get none of the tools that actually make it fun, and then they get frustrated and they're like, fuck this, I'm out, and then they do something else.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Also, try to like limit how many regrets you're going to use. If you're going to be, for example, I have leveled quite a few times Volatile Dead Spellslinger, but I really enjoy leveling with lightning during the campaign, like Ball Lightning, Arc, and Wave of Conviction, and that feels really nice. And it's also a very small respec because I try to be very general with the nodes, and that's where Spiritual Aid comes in handy, right? The minion damage being generic damage works for both lightning and fire, then I don't have to waste a lot of respecs. So if all I have to waste is like 8 or 10 regrets that I'm already getting from quests during the line, that's really great. But if you're leveling like a melee build, or you want to play bow endgame and you're leveling with melee, you might end up having to use like 20 to 40 regrets sometimes. So definitely keep that in mind when making your build.
I would say anything that requires you to find off the ground more than 5 regrets, I would say, by the time you hit maps, is something you should be very concerned about.
Yeah.
Because it is actually a lot harder to find 5 regrets by the time you hit maps than you would think. Yep. So you can map out how many regrets will I get through questing. So how much leeway do I actually have by the time I get to my maps? So how many? Do you know how many there are? It's like 12,
20?
18, 20? Is that 20?
20?
Oh shit, that's a lot. Okay, so you have around 20. One thing to note though is also with
Might
bandits.
Be exactly 20.
Okay. With bandits, that's something that people will make a mistake on, and even veteran players make that mistake as well, is that what bandit do you choose, and can you be greedy in terms of picking a leveling bandit? So if you're an SSF, I would highly suggest not picking, unless there's a very good reason, I wouldn't pick a bandit that is not my endgame bandit choice, because 20 regrets is a lot.
Yep.
And it can feel like forever to changing it around. And also regrets are basically alchemy orbs, so you can convert them as well if you need alchs later on. So you're basically saying no to your first 20 regrets / alchs, and that's a very big deal. Also, if you made small mistakes, let's say that you decided, oh, I'm gonna kill, or I'm gonna help Valera for the early resist, right? Oh shit, it feels really good. You have the extra mana, you have the resist, and then you get to maps, and then you have to wait with those 20. But it also means not just do you have to spend the 20, but it's also all that time leading up to it. The small adjustments you would like to make are so much harder and feel so much worse if you are kind of experimenting with your build, because you don't have those extra to just play around with that you would normally have. Oh, I'm just gonna respect that one or respect that node. So just keep that in mind.
Something else that is very, very important as well when like deciding a build, it depends a lot. Is this going to be your first character? Is this a character you already have gear for? Because sometimes I'll see people ask if like, hey, is this a good starter? And they want to play SSF and they have like 7 uniques in their build. I'm like, you're not getting these. early at all, right? That can be a
Yeah.
big issue. So try to like limit your expectations versus uniques and rares, and that is why something like a Necromancer Volatile Dead or a Essence Drain character can be so nice because they aren't relying on any uniques to get up and running, right?
Yeah. There's like a few uniques in the game that are easily obtainable at a low level. Like a few that come to mind would be, I don't know if this is that true anymore, but it has been in the past. Sire Shards used to be very easily farmable
Hmm.
in Lunaris
All right.
and those areas. So that's what people will do for cremation, for instance. So they will do like 2-hand cremation, and you basically have your endgame weapon very early on. So that kind of enabled that whole playstyle for like a league. So that was pretty cool. You also have what's that other thing? Like the line card?
The
Linus?
Lion is a great example because you can farm that in Act
Yes.
6.
Yes. It's so there's like a few uniques where you could say, okay, I want to build around this unique, but it's only because it's farmable at a stage where your character, like where you can consistently get to the place and farm it.
Yeah.
If you want to farm something and it's something that enables you to build and it's in a map, well, first you need to get to the map, and then you need to figure out how do I make sure that this map drops all the time so I can keep farming this card.
Yeah. And as far as like, there are some rare items that are actually surprisingly farmable that aren't actually that insane to put in a build. So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
Chevron's Wrappings or Comb's Heart are like
Yeah.
surprisingly farmable. Like, I think this league on SSF, I farmed like 4 Shavs just by playing the game. Because it drops very, very easily off every time Chevron is a map boss. So, like Core, Scriptorium, Cells, and there's one more. I always forget. And then like the Comb's Heart card drops in like Volcano. Oh yeah, Tower. So
Yes.
those two, even though they're like fairly rare items, they're very farmable even on SSF, and I've done that a lot myself. So that's like something you can do. But
Yeah.
I can't
But that
remember what it was.
you
But
should still have because that still becomes your end game build. That becomes a build where you have to swap into it. That's kind of for the more advanced player, I would say.
yeah,
Is whenever you go for especially low life with the chevrons,
yeah,
that's kind of where you have to, in that scenario, plan ahead.
yeah.
There has to be 2 builds that you're going from one to the other, and you need to figure out when is it I swap. Is it when I get the item, or is there a level requirement as well I need?
Mm-hmm. Something else that's very, very important for builds, and we started touching on a little bit earlier, is what kind of like numbers should you be hoping for expectation wise? And obviously, that's going to vary a little bit if you're hardcore or softcore, if you're going for bosses or just clearing maps. And one big downside to trying to find out these numbers is that not every skill is calculated the same way, which is why I suggest that you do look on PoE Ninja, look at other people's builds, so you have like a end game example of what damage to look for. Because as a quick example, Volatile Dead is going to be calculating not DPS, but average damage per projectile.
Yes.
Whereas other builds might be calculating DPS. And in some, you might actually have to manually calculate them by going like, well, I have this many casts per second, and I'm casting this many per second. And then you have to actually do the maths yourself. So that can be really frustrating. And just comparing yourself to another build is a lot easier in that case. But I would say for like just mapping, something like 300,000 or 500,000 DPS is completely fine. And then for like comfortable bossing where you don't want to spend like the same amount of time as Quinn does on one boss, you want like a little bit over 1 million.
Yeah.
I just
think
love
that's
throwing in a little bit like smack for Quinn there. I love Quinn, don't get me wrong. But yeah,
he picked surprisingly well for this last league. with
even
Earthquake.
Dan was copying Quinn's build, unironically.
Yeah.
They did really well.
Well, was he actually wait?
Yeah. Dan was like, yeah, I'm copying Quinn's build.
Oh, nice.
They did well. Did really, really good this league.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, like over 1 million damage. Like if you're a softcore player and you're used to playing like glass cannon, big DPS characters, that's not a lot. But generally, as long as you have 1 million, that's enough to do like Awakener 8 and Uber Elder and stuff like that. And obviously, the more you get, is sort of a big form of defense too, because the less time you spend in the boss fight, the safer you are. Especially with fights like, Shaper and Uber Elder that do have softened rages, where the arena will just start like filling up over time.
Right. So in terms of I think it's good to have. So I think the 300 to 500k and the 1 million is pretty good. I think in terms of like, I think that's really hard for players to figure out is, how do I know I'm doing 300 or 1 million? Like 300k or 1 million? How do I know I'm actually doing that amount of damage?
True.
Because it's a good number. However, the most important thing here with those numbers is that we're talking about sustained DPS. This is not a dream scenario where if the stars aligned, your mother came up with breakfast and you didn't oversleep today, then you're actually managing to get 1 million DPS. No, this is a scenario where you're stumbling out of bed and everything goes wrong. Someone stepped on your toe and you spilled your coffee, right? That's the kind of scenario you need to look at whenever you're bossing. That's the scenario you want to expect. And so if you have, say, I think what are some good builds to? I think ED is a really good build here to think about, because getting if you can get 1 million dot damage on your essence drain, you're going to feel like a god.
Yeah.
And it is surprising to people that, oh shit, I feel like a god with this, when they would have some, I don't know, some steel skill from earlier that potentially got up to 2 million DPS, and they feel like you're not even making a dent. But I think Awakening here is a great example of a boss that's just going to make your life hell for these kind of builds, and it's because it never stands still. He's blinking all over the place. He's hard to hit. And it's just a mess.
And a lot of that comes down to experience, because that's not really calculated anywhere, and I would call it more effective DPS. It's a little bit about why things like brands have been so strong, essence drain, and things like that. Because, sometimes the boss just like, it's moving, or it's so scary to be on top of the boss.
Yeah.
And even if it says you have 5 million damage in PoB, you like effectively might have like 400,000 if you're like never damaging him. And you're just running away like, can't really DPS here. So that is something to keep in mind too. And while it seems like pretty forehead to say it, just don't get hit is the biggest defense in Path of Exile. And that's why like it really rewards like the mobility of minion builds, and everything that can move while doing damage.
And then making sure that when you do get hit, you always survive it.
Because you got to build defense.
Yes. So see, that's where we come back to like the three tenets that I kind of go by, which is offense, defense, and mobility. Right? If you can balance all three, you have a good build. If you don't balance all three, you will often find yourself in a bad spot. If you just don't have enough damage, well, you don't have enough damage, and we know what that looks like. That sucks. If you don't have enough defense, well, then when you go in for the damage, he's going to slap you once and you die. Well, that sucks. And if you have enough damage and you have enough defense, however, you don't have any mobility, you're going to get hit by all the things you shouldn't get hit by, and you still die, and you don't do damage. So there's a good mix of things that you always need to consider.
Unless you have so much defense that you're just standing there like a Hulk, just like holding the boss down and pummeling it into the ground. That works too. We've done that.
You can do it with damage as well, as seen by one-shot Awakener builds.
Yeah, true.
So there's like an extreme to everything.
Yeah.
And even movement speed if you go in lab.
That's actually, for a lot of people, the best way to defeat Uber theory is to just one-shot every phase.
Yes.
It's actually fairly safe too. I've done it on hardcore with like Trapper Mine builds. Is that just every stage get damage reduction now with the new like damage reduction on spawning? Or is it just when you first meet her? I'm not sure, but either way, at least like they've added like some weird new thing now that when a boss spawns, it has like damage reduction for 3 or 4 seconds. Didn't used to be there, so Uber theory was very one-shottable.
Yes.
So you just run up.
I haven't tried it after.
Bruh. And then just do that a few times, and then you barely get hit.
So that's actually that's another good thing, another good point is that there is a that your DPS varies a lot, determined depending on what kind of build you are, and it'll be effect. So some builds can burst out a lot of damage, right? They might not have the highest sustained DPS, but however they can pre-fire, say, I don't know, like they can quadruple their initial burst, meaning that you can make the boss not move, making you not move, and then all the other things that come off that. So for this league, there was exerted attacks, right?
Yeah.
You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seismic, plus intimidate, plus whatever else you have in your bank, and you go in and you just tap the boss, and if it's not gone, it's almost gone. And so you don't have to go through this whole process of managing all my cooldowns, managing all my exerts and everything to make sure. No, you just go in and prepare and
just one shot the boss.
Yes, just one shot the boss. However, it's surprising the difference if you don't one shot the boss and you then have to re-engage, how much that sucks and how much harder the boss will feel if you only, like, let's say you can hit it for like 50% rather than 90% or 100. Having to set up all that after the fight is already going is so much harder.
Yep.
I played the, what's it called, the Berserker, and it was surprisingly good at bossing. Even though it's pretty squishy, right? It's like it didn't have the best defense. It was okay. But just the fact that you could just one-shot the boss on like a slow two-hand build, because you could ramp up so much damage, was just made the build so much more enjoyable to play, because it felt a little bit clunky other places. So you just don't want to have that feeling all the time.
Yeah. I think something that is very important too, while talking about buffs and stuff, which we were talking a little bit with the config earlier, I always make my builds underperform in Path of Building, especially for starter builds.
Yes.
Because if I, with like no flasks up, no configs or nothing that's like not permanently up, have like decent like 300,000 damage, then the build's gonna feel great, right? I have trash gear, I have none of the flasks up, I have nothing enabled, nothing crazy, and it still looks decent on paper, then it's actually going to feel amazing. Because something you see a lot of people do, like a lot of build creators do this, they'll like enable everything, and they'll be like, yeah, it has 5 million damage, but then you start playing the build and it just feels like garbage, because it doesn't actually have 5 million damage. Maybe it has 5 million damage once every map or something. So you'll often like surprise yourself with how strong a build really is. Because if you're calculating it on the low end, maybe you have 300 to 500,000, and it actually has 1 million, now and again, you're just going to be very positively surprised. And that's like very important for following people's builds too, because how it'll happen for a lot of players, like, well, I was following Zizaran's build, and this one was dog shit. I feel it was like falsely advertised. Maybe the first time you do that, you're like, shit, maybe that was my fault. Maybe I fucked something up. But if that's a recurring theme, they probably just have bad builds. I actually stole one of Nugiyen's builds this league, which I was very, very happy with. And I've been showing it off today as well a little bit. But Nugiyen had this like really, really nice Bladeful Blade Blast character. And yeah, it's just, using the mechanic. It's a chieftain, and we've seen a lot of people playing builds like this. Like, for example, Crying and Lily had an assassin Blade Blast character. That looked very strong too. But I really like Nugiyen's when looking at it, because I just felt that it was so tanky. But then also when I saw him playing, I was like, I can make this even better for my playstyle. Because I figured I can turn on Righteous Fire and keep that permanently going, which I thought was a nice idea. And it's just like a really, really well-rounded, crazy high damage, crazy high tank character, which makes it kind of perfect for hardcore. But if you look at like all the builds, like we just saw Volatile Dead Spellslinger, that had very similar nodes to a lot of what we have here, even though this is a chieftain. We both have like, well, actually I would be filling out the life wheel here next. We have life nodes here, we have life nodes here. And especially as a life character, you are forced to stretch a lot more because your life nodes are like kind of spread out. If we open up Path of Building here again now, and we search for life, you'll see that there are, wait, actually, it's search for maximum life. You'll see that if we search for maximum life, they're spread out all over the entire tree. And that's why, because of that, very, very high life characters, like anything like 7k and above, you'll generally see quite a lot of traveling nodes. Oh,
Yeah.
we should do PvP actually. A quick 1v1, my build versus your build on the Blade Blast Chieftains.
But you spend so much time min-maxing your gear with Harvest.
It's true, my build's pretty well, it's pretty great. That's
We
true.
could try it.
Alright. But yeah, and then let's now search for maximum energy shield. You'll see that all of these nodes, which is like, this is like the most commonly taken things, and they're all very close to each other. There's very little traveling nodes. Like, for example, to get to this wheel down here, you're getting a jewel node and then only 2 more travel nodes. And up here, like, a lot of the builds that are taking energy shield are regularly up here anyway. So energy shield does have that as an advantage. And I would also argue that the percentage intelligence that you get from int is also stronger than the flat life that you get from life.
Yes.
So endgame, you'll see a lot of people on both boss healers and characters that they play. A lot of veteran characters will like start playing energy shield, but the big downside being it might take some getting used to not having life flaps. Did you want to do a quick duel?
What?
Do you want to do a duel?
Yeah, I'm just allocating space here.
Oh.
So actually, what I would like you to do right now is go on PoB.
Yeah.
So it's like a good little thing. If you're comparing builds as well, so I would say import. So this is like a good little how do you import? Because I think this.
Oh, actually, excellent that you brought that up. Actually, because a lot of people will ask streamers all the time.
Yes.
Do you have a POB for your build? And even if the streamer hasn't made a guide, you can just search now. Like for example, here, this is Nugiyen's account name.
There. The only caveat here is that just make sure that the streamer has their account set to public, and then everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't show up. It won't find it.
So for example, here, I can now see Havoc's Apprentice, right? This is in the league, SSF Harvest Hardcore. And you can do this with pretty much every streamer except Havoc. He likes keeping his stuff private. This secretive guy. But yeah, most people have it open. And then you can just click import on passive tree and skills, item and skills. And then now you have this build.
And I think this will also be, so now you can see the difference between your and my build. Yeah. You know, just for something seemingly similar, you know, like there are some common themes here, and then there are some things that are slightly different.
And here we can turn on the power per node thing. And then, for example, when we untick Divine Judgment, you can see that it is like glaringly red. That means that it's like a very, very point worth. Yeah, pick me. Exactly. I think our skill trees are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Oh no, you have Avatar Fire stuff.
Yeah. Oh, did you actually manage to get out of it?
No, I never managed to get rid of it. Actually, I just come from the left. That's it.
Ah, okay.
I just don't think I got enough thread of hopes. No, I did. I can't remember, but we just have slightly different pathing here.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I think a thing to note with the slightly different pathing is that the slightly different pathing might actually not make a difference at all. It could actually be the exact same amount of points. I'm not sure. So a lot of the time in PoE, you will see people going like left or right, up or down, and sometimes it'll just be the same build.
Yeah.
Just from a different, so it doesn't, and then it's just down to aesthetics, right?
And sometimes as well, it's not objectively better or worse. Sometimes it's just about, like, for example, one example, back in the day, a lot of people were playing discharge builds, and a lot of people were going assassin. But I found myself preferring Trickster because it was maybe slightly faster, a lot less damage, but a lot more survival. And especially,
and no mana problems.
Yeah, and especially for me, as I enjoy reading chat quite a lot, and I'd be looking at chat more than the game. I really wanted that 2,000 or 3,000 extra energy shield buffer I got from doing Trickster.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Sometimes it's just different, not just objectively better.
Yeah, I mean, it has to fit your playstyle. The thing is, like, objectively best in PoE is very difficult for anyone to say, unless you have you need something tangible, right? You need, oh, what is the best at killing X boss? Then we can objectively look at, oh well, if they do it at the same time, which has less risk, right? The less risk character will always win if they always do it at the same time, right? If you time a kill from start to finish, then if you can reduce risk, that's just better. If you can reduce speed, that's also good. But it's like you need something where you can actually point towards that thing. What's better?
Yeah. And yeah, somebody asked, like, Legion jewels, they do not show in Path of Building, which is very frustrating for theory crafting.
Yeah.
And another thing about the power per point versus not having it on power per point, then it'll take into account, like, how much do you have to travel to get there? Like, is it worth it per point?
Yeah.
However, having it off can also be a good way to figure out what are some strong anoints. So for example, you'll see here with Command of Steel, this is glowing very red. And if you can, like, anoint this, that is obviously a lot of damage, right? It's 75% damage for this build. Whereas obviously you're not going to travel there, because that's like a lot of travel nodes. But yeah, no, this is like, yeah.
I mean, we can go over the steps I went through maybe to making the build.
Let's do that.
Right. So let's see. I was playing. Oh, right. I was coming off playing some Earthquake, I believe, or some, what's it called, Earth Shatter. So I've been playing melee for the entire league up until this point, and I wanted to try something new. And I watched Crying play Assassin, and he was pretty flying. He was flying with his Blade Blast Assassin. However, I'm not the biggest fan of the whole Assassin shell for a league like this, because it felt like there were too many times where it would just kind of get overwhelmed with damage and just not live through it. If people like Lily, I saw dying to, what was it? She died to the Crusader one. And it didn't seem that safe doing stuff like Shaper as well. So there's like a few things about a skill like Bladefall, Blade Blast. So first of all, I thought, well, can I maybe automate it with Spellsinger? However, you can't really do it, because the problem is that the sequencing, how it cascades, doesn't actually allow you to get the right amount of like the chain going off of the skill, the Blade Blast.
I played around with Blade Blast, Bladefall, and it is pretty fun.
Oh, so there is it's fun, and then there is the, how effective does it actually end up being? Because I'm sure it's fun, but everyone I've seen doing it have kind of complained on damage.
So the way I got around that is I was using double obliteration for clear, having a very smooth clear, and then the damage on single target was fine, because since you're attacking on the same spot, the sequence doesn't matter. And then obliteration obviously does a lot of fist-based damage. I mean, I wasn't doing anything crazy with it, but
it can't generate enough blades either. I'm pretty sure, because the problem with triggering any blade skill is that it will only give you half the amount of blades to explode. So when you self-cast it, you just get more blades. And so the whole idea with the build is that you generate blades on the ground that you then explode with the Blade Blast, right? So you just want to generate as many as possible. And so it was nearly impossible to actually get the slinger set up to generate enough without sacrificing too much to get there. Yeah, but let's not delve too much, because like there are upsides with Spellsinger, which is the automation, which just makes it a faster mapper, I would say. But as an overall, so it's like for bossing, I would say I wouldn't prefer it, but for just as a general build, you could if you want to make a Spellsinger Blade Blast build, you can make it.
Yeah.
Coming back to why I went Chieftain then. So when I saw the Assassin, I was like, I can't really see myself doing too much bossing, too much high-end content, because there's like a limit to how far this can go defensively. Either that, or I have to get some insane gear, solving all the problems. So I ended up thinking, okay, where else can I go? And any fist spell generally is just good on chieftain because you convert it all to fire. And that's very neat because there are so many nodes on the tree that, kind of helps you with that. So you get the leech and you get the conversion, and it's a full fist skill, and you can go EO all of a sudden. You can use more supports. So that's like a way to where you don't need to be crit, right? So we don't actually need to be crit. Going crit it's a secondary line of offensive power that you can add to any build, which will generally always give you more damage. However, it comes at a cost where you have to spend more points on the skill tree on damage, because now you have to go for two different scaling damage types.
Yeah.
So you have to pick crit nodes and you have to pick damage nodes to then benefit, and you have to pick enough of both to where it actually starts mattering. So you're always it always feels like you're a little short unless you have a very min-maxed build at the end. And then I really love Chieftain because one thing I don't think that a lot of people appreciate enough is recovery.
Yeah.
And that's what Chieftain really excels at, recovery. It has Leech built into the Ascendancy for spells that can be generally really hard to get. And then it just has a lot of regen on top. So that combined means that in PoE, bosses are very predictable in terms of what they do, meaning that damage output is very predictable. Meaning that if you know exactly how much life you can recover over a given amount of time, you know that you can always survive X thing. So let's say that you get beamed down by Awakener, or you have Shaper Balls coming in your face, and you just want to tank it. Well, let's say that you can survive a full Beam Blast, okay? And let's say that you come into the fight with 7k life, 6k life, and you go down to 1k, right? That feels not too nice, right? We're down to 1,000 life. Now we have to recover our entire life pool. If it takes us, say, 10 seconds, like just without leech or anything, just through regen to recover our life pool, that leaves you hanging for a very long time. So what you really want to do in a fight like that, where it's not going to blast you immediately after, again, you want to figure out, okay, how do I then recover my life fast? So you can do that through regen, and Chieftain has so much regen.
Yep.
If you've recently been hit by fire, your, what's it called? Life. What's that?
It's 50% increased life recovery rate if you've taken fire damage from an enemy hit recently.
Yeah. So if you've taken it, it's kind of crazy. Let's say they take
and every hit from an enemy is a fire damage hit, because you have 10% fist damage from hits taken as fire damage.
Yes. So that's for physical. That's also very, very, very nice. Physical spells and physical damage in general can be pretty difficult to deal with. So just having more of that being mitigated is really nice. Also, it makes it so that it converts to the fire, which is also nice from physical hits. Yeah. So it's just really nice on the Chieftain that I was able to make a build where now I can just kind of tank a lot more. So the downside of Chieftain is, so on the damage we can kind of we catch up quite a lot to the assassin due to the shell of the fire conversion and the fist to element damage, which is very powerful as a scaling mechanic. It's basically your crit is the conversion, and then the double scaling of damage that becomes like sort of your extra layer of damage that makes it so that you can be a non-crit. So if you generally make non-crit characters, you should look for a second way to scale your damage outside of generic damage. So if you are, let's say, full fist damage, it could be impale, it could be bleed, it could be exerts, right? If you're spell damage, you have EO, all sorts of different spell mechanics, combo skills, and all that. There's like you just generally don't want to be just only generic damage and no crit.
There's also one big advantage of the Chieftain over Assassin, And that is that the assassin is crit, which doesn't really scale things like the explosion chest at all. So we
True.
can, for example,
Yes.
just like open in a map now, and you can see that my chest has enemies you kill explode, dealing 3% of their life as physical damage. 3% of a monster's life, that's not a lot. However, we're converting this explosion. I have Avatar Fire, we have the 50% conversion from Chieftain, so now this is 100%, right? And that means that anything I have, like 50% increased elemental damage, 40% more elemental damage from elemental overload, that'll all work on the explosion.
Yes.
So I can like show off real quick here that I'm just gonna run around and right click with the Blade Blast. So Blade Blast is one single blade. And you can see that one right click is enough in most cases to just one shot the pack. We're literally just running around right clicking monsters. This has around, I think each hit, it's like 80,000 damage per hit right now. Obviously this is mostly a thing in Harvest, because they're going to be a lot harder to get in Heist, just because Harvest was very, very easy to craft them. You just needed 2 augment physicals basically, and then you had it.
You'll notice that something that's pretty hilarious, where you realize how little damage you actually need for mapping, is whenever you proc your Wave of Conviction and it randomly one-shots an entire pack.
Yeah. So for example, I can now just start flame dashing through monsters, and then you'll see that the explosion is taking care of most of it. So now I'm not even like attacking monsters anymore. I'm not even blade blasting. I'm literally just flame dashing through monsters right now. So this is probably why like some people weren't that big a fan of the explosion.
Yep. This is where the immobility of a class like Chieftain, because you can see it's not very fast, right? You don't cast very fast, but the thing is, like Sis just mentioned, like the exploding chest is something that you can consistently build around in this league. This is not something you can do in any league. So this is where you should be very cautious if your first build next league is going to be a Chieftain with what's it called? With Blade Blast. One of your problems might be that you're gonna feel like your clear is slow.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be 2 reasons for this. One thing is that you don't have a way to probably clear the screen because you don't have enough cast speed. And secondly, you don't have enough move speed. So you don't move very fast between packs. And if you miss a pack, if it doesn't immediately blow up to your combo, you have to like recast, and you cast very slow. So this is where if I can just make sure if I kill one monster, regardless of what it is, everything explodes, and then I don't need to do anything ever again. And that basically is the exploded chest. It's basically the exploded chest becomes the end game solution to all your clearing problems.
Yeah. Sounds like the Chieftain Blade Blast is you need a lot of dex for your gems. I mean, yes.
Not really.
But you don't really need that much.
Yeah.
What's the highest you need? Yeah, you need 159
That's
for a
true.
21 Blade Blast.
Yeah.
I feel like you get so much dex just from one amulet with dex crafted on it. You can get dex on a belt with an essence very easily. And worst case scenario, you can use the conversion jewels. I can't remember what the dex one is.
Fluid motion. This is another one.
Strength is transformed to dexterity. Yeah, so worst case scenario, I could use the fluid motion.
Yeah, that one.
If it really like came to it. But yeah, that can be annoying.
So I would say as a league starter, this will feel a little underwhelming because it's going to feel slow, especially compared to like other builds out there. It'll still buff very well. It'll still be a very solid character. Just if you want to be fast on league start, maybe consider the assassin, because it's just a much faster mapper. However, I would say so there's like 2 things here. Going into Heist, if you were to pick up this build, I would be happy and concerned at the same time for this as my starter pick. So the thing I would be happy with is that I am fairly certain that I will have enough single target damage for any encounter, and it's very unlikely to be randomly one-shot and be overwhelmed by damage because you're constantly going to be topped off because this new encounters, it seems very Betrayal Delve-like. You're constantly taking hits whenever you're running, but you're constantly keeping yourself top because of your great recovery, and you have a good amount of mitigation, so you don't get one shot. Right? If you remember Betrayal, oof, that was rough. You know, we tried to build defense, but it was just never enough. So that was. So I think you can look at Heist and Betrayal in terms of what you can expect, in terms of like potentially getting one shot. It looks like it's very bursty, right? However, one thing Betrayal, there was I guess the where it ran away, you kind of need some speed, but it wasn't really that important. However, in Heist, speed is important, and Chieftain is not very fast. And if you're like trying to, you know, yeet out with all your loot, that might be a little bit difficult on a Chieftain because he's very slow.
And obviously, like, while talking about builds for the upcoming league, we don't fully know what is going to be buffed or nerfed. I would be surprised if something in particular to this build would get nerfed. There's like nothing that really like stands out to me. Obviously, like all builds are kind of nerfed just because of harvest crafting being gone, so you will have like lower power than you did last league. However, there is one really important thing for any build, and that is to remember that like if a build is nerfed, even if it like looks pretty significant, that doesn't mean that it is a dead build. There are several examples of this. I think the best example being the Guardian build, the what is it called? The Aura stacking build. Herald Guardian. It's the best example of this. This is one of the few times they've nerfed a build mid-league, and they nerfed it with what, 60, 80% power? Something like that.
Oh, right.
They nerfed it pretty significantly.
Yeah, so the mid-league. Yeah.
They nerfed it pretty significantly mid-league, and the forums were angry. People were upset. They were quitting Path of Exile forever. They were never trusting Grinding Games as a company again. And it was still probably the strongest build the game has ever seen by like 80% stronger than any other build.
You know, they just found a way to make it even better, right? There's like so many things that still hadn't been explored, like mid-league. People who think that they know everything about a build mid-league, I don't listen to them generally. Just if they think everything has been figured out within 2 weeks, no, it just never has. That's never actually been a thing in PoE. It always takes time, and people reiterate on things, and it becomes better and better and better.
Yeah. And there are some times where a nerf will mean like, yeah, this build isn't that great anymore, but you definitely do want to, like Molten Strike, for example, did get nerfed maybe a little harder than it deserved. But for example, Spark, right? They nerfed Spark so many times before like managing to kill it off, which is, I guess, what they were trying to do. But the patch notes even said at one point, Val Spark has been nerfed in every single way. This was literally in the patch notes. And then, sure enough, 2 days after League launch, I'm sparking away. And like #1 on Reddit is like, oh, Zizaran does it again while Spark. And I'm like, Spark. Yeah, Spark's in an okay place right now. But just, you'll see a lot of fear on Reddit when there are nerfs, and a lot of people like exaggerating, like, oh my god, dead build, never touching it again. But yeah, there's still a lot of builds that have been nerfed several times. Like Essence Drain, for example, that is still like insanely powerful. And Essence Drain, in its current state, had huge posts on Reddit saying the build is dead, I'm never playing it again. Because the radius on Contagion got like, it's like 30% now of what it used to be.
But then they forgot all the buffs that it had gotten as well over time.
That's the other thing, right? New league equals new buffs in a lot of ways. Like, for example, for the upcoming league, right? Obviously, we don't know what's getting nerfed or buffed yet. But there are so many possibilities open up with the new incoming replicas. And they're going to open up so many builds. Like, if you are a build connoisseur and you like really want to try, like, I don't want to follow Nugiyen's build. I don't want to follow this build. I want to make my own. There are so many options in this upcoming league with the replica uniques and fun things that you can make. And to be honest, like, regardless of what you're doing, making a build in Path of Exile is always going to you're gonna have to know like where some clusters is and like be creative with searching around, because look at this, like, it's a very big skill tree, right? So when you're completely new to the game, you are still going to be locked a little bit behind guides. I remember I was watching a streamer called Lyric play the game, and he was taking advice from his chat. His skill
Oh,
tree.
no.
His skill tree looked like this. I'm about to show you. He was a duelist,
No.
and this was his skill tree.
Maybe it's okay. Is it good? Oh no. Oh no.
He had basically something like this. Like his chat convinced him that stat gain characters were super OP. So he basically had just loads of stats
Oh
on
no.
one of his
Like,
first characters. And it was painful to watch because obviously chat just lies. They're horrible. But yeah.
oh, that has to be. Oh my. That
It's
is like.
not always the most obvious thing what to do in Path of Exile. Sometimes you trust the wrong people.
That's very cruel.
Yeah.
That's just cruel. This is the.
I think he did have some damage nodes too. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, it was rough. It was rough. But yeah, obviously we've all seen like people's reactions to seeing the Path of Exile skill tree for the first time. And while it seems overwhelming, it isn't as overwhelming as it seems, but it is still very comprehensive. And large. I feel like you're still hurting from that.
Yeah, that's rough. I think make sure you have like just make sure you have some like good life nodes, make sure you have some good damage nodes, make sure you have some like that you're solved your mobility in some way, you know, that you find like the thing is you can basically be a blank character with no mobility and you can always find something in terms of making you move, right? Get your quicksilver out there, you know, your flame dash with either dash or flame dash with second wind, a smoke mine if you like that kind of play style, leap slam, or just make sure you have a good shell to move around and you'll feel so much better. And then make sure you have enough life and damage and just go from there. You know, don't expect that your first build is going to be perfect. PoE is all about, you know, repetition.
So I think a lot of people are asking for us to make a build right now. Should we do that?
Sure.
What do you want to make?
making?
We could do something I'm not familiar with a lot. Like, I don't know. I haven't played Vortex in ages.
Vortex. I haven't played that.
You have?
No, I haven't played that.
Oh, okay. Should we do something like one of us is cracking lance? Okay, we could make a mock-up for a cracking lance build.
Sure, we can do that real quick.
Do we know the tags? It's probably AoE.
Yeah. That's like the most important thing. Like when picking a build, the first thing when you pick a skill gem you like, make sure to read all the tags. It's very important.
Yeah. So for example, if you don't know how to like read tags and stuff and what we're talking about right now, the reason why we're like there's no league starter guides, like, you know, cracking lance looks like a really cool skill, right? And a lot of people want to play that, but we don't know what tags they are. So for example, if I go look right now at Arc, we can see that it's spell, chaining, and lightning. Body swap has a movement spell, AoE, fire, travel, and that gives you a lot of like the ideas of what you want to build around. Right now, we don't have that for cracking lance, so we can only assume. We can assume that it has 6% base crit.
Well, it's definitely AoE.
Is it though?
Yes, because they use Intensify with it.
Oh, good. So what could we use to simulate it? Stormcall?
Yeah.
Let's use Stormcall to simulate it, because we don't have this.
About the bzzz finger thing.
Tendrils.
Yeah.
Lightning tendrils. Let's use, but that's channeling.
Oh, true. Yeah, use Stormcall. It's probably not a channeling.
No, it's not. Same with Divine Iris channeling. Stormcall, I think, is the most likely. Stormcall or Shock Nova would both work. So then, like, what do you want to do first, Nugi? Do you usually do the skill tree, or do you put in like the skill gems for the main build itself first?
I mean, you probably make a fall link, just a generic fall link to start, and then you just
crit?
have. I would say no.
Okay.
I wouldn't start. Well, you can go crit. So this is where you would want to
Let's
make
do an
a few
Impulsa
different
build.
Sure.
We'll aim for Impulsa. So controlled, elemental focus. We just put in penetration there. These are like pretty easy gems that we know all these are gonna
focus
affect them a lot.
is a little bit of a not sure.
It'll be fine if we're shocking in a different
Depends.
way. We can take that out if we're gonna
Yes.
use Impulso. We won't have that early though. But let's say
It's
we have
just
faster
also like
casting though.
I would say that right now as well, with how much better shock skills are,
Mhm. True.
it just like they buff shock overall, so it's much easier to shock now. So
Yeah.
not being able to shock, yeah, you
And-
can capitalize on shock a lot now.
Quite a lot of people seem very surprised that I was suggesting LE focus with Impulsa, but that's very, very common. There's a lot of ways to shock without it. Vinktar, and more importantly, the one that I use the most is Storm's Gift. So I generally always use LE focus with skills, and then I'll use Storm's Gift to shock because that makes it proliferate, and the explosion actually explodes off itself, which is a lot better.
You see, this is that is a very tall order, especially on SSF, to get a Storm's. Wait, isn't it? Wait, what is?
It's
Wait,
not
no,
that
now
hard.
Oh, it's the gloves.
Yeah, it's not that hard.
mean,
It's not. They're
okay,
not from
I mean,
Cortex. They're from any small one.
Yeah. By the time you have an Impulsor, you probably have a Storm's Gift.
Yeah.
Generally, it's like, yeah. So.
Yeah.
It's
Especially
not
on
the
Trade
worst.
League, it's very easy to get.
Yeah, on Trade League for sure. On Trade League, it's no problem.
What character are we doing? Are we doing the Duelist? The Marauder? The Ranger? The Scion?
Ooh.
I hope Scion gets a lot of love this league. I feel like I haven't played a Scion in a year or two.
Okay. Try type in lightning just in the search bar and just zoom out. This will give people a little bit of an indication. So we're a lightning skill, right? Should I be top or bottom?
Duelist.
Right?
Gladiator.
This gives you a very easy indication on where should I be on the tree if I'm lightning. As you're probably top. So we are probably going to go top somewhere. So here, I would say generally what you can do is you can pick an ascendancy and then you can go. So let's assume that there are, or let's just say there are six quadrants. Do you say quadrants?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are 6 quadrants on the skill tree, each for, one of the main characters. And I would say you can pick one and then you can go 2 to either side. Like one, you can get 2 jumps, generally. It's how far you can go away. So you can go either 1 to both sides or 2 over. So that means that any of the 3 top ones are pretty good. And you could argue for anything other than the duelist as well, in a pinch. However, I would say going for anything below the middle is a very specialized build and needs prior knowledge to how to build it to make it function correctly. Anything above the middle on the lightning build here will probably function fine.
Yeah. So that means that for a build like this, you're most likely, and obviously like this isn't saying it can't be done, but it's going to require a heavier investment and probably that you know what you're doing and you have a good reason for doing it. If for some reason you're doing like a Marauder or you're doing a Duelist or a Ranger. Like for example, like the Bladeful Blade Blast, for example, is a little bit harder to get working on a Chieftain than it is on an Elementalist sometimes. So yeah, generally then we're limited to, we do have the option of Scion. Scion right now is also generally like you should have a good reason for doing it. It's not like super powerful right now. There have been leagues where Scion, I don't know if they've said if they're even doing ascendancy changes. I think if they're not doing ascendancy changes, I'm playing Necromancer or Trickster the entire league, and that's all we're playing.
They don't need to do any ascendancy changes to kill a lot of the Necromancer builds that are meta right now.
They just need to play with this.
With what?
What's your delay at the moment? Can you see it?
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I see it now. Dancing Glows? Yeah.
Yeah, they just need to play with that. But yeah, Necromancer and Trickster, at least for hardcore, are probably the most powerful ascendancies and like most meta right now. There are obviously a lot of other things that are very strong right now as well. But yeah, let's say that we're limited for this from where we have Witch, we have Templar, and we have Shadow as our 3 choices. I think probably a lot of people like Inquisitors. We could do that.
Yeah, Inquisitor is easy because it's very generic. It's very self-explanatory, right? I would say you can start non-crit and then go crit.
Yeah.
Or you can, it's kind of up to you.
Yeah.
It does a lot of good.
We will talk a little bit about Inquisitor because it's not that widely played lately. And it has changed a little bit throughout the years. Before, Inquisitor was pretty much one of the crit ascendancies, and people would always go crit with it. And they've now made it like a little bit more viable lately to not be crit, just because of the sheer amount of high cast speed it has. So you have, for example, Instruments of Virtue. If you're a spellcaster that's also shield charging, you're getting these buffs constantly. You're getting 30 spell damage, 20 attack speed, and 30 cast speed, right? So you're shield charging faster, and you get really, really nice clear speed. Righteous Providence is giving you 100% crit chance when something, like on the first attack you do on something, and then if you're continuing to attack them, you'll get crit multi on them. Inevitable Judgment. This sort of got buffed throughout the ages because monsters, if we see here, is the enemy a boss? Monsters gained a lot more resist. So what Inevitable
bosses,
Judgment?
Right? They added another 10 resist.
Yeah, they added 10% more resist to bosses, but Inevitable Judgment completely ignores this. It doesn't put it to 0. This doesn't mean that you can you can't have 100 penetration plus this and go minus 100. It actually means that anything like curses, so for example, if you're doing flammability or conductivity, that actually does nothing for Inevitable Judgment. You're completely ignoring all the rest as if it had 0. Then you have another...
Go on, no, just go on.
You have another thing here called Augury of Penitence. And this is actually very, very strong because this is nearby enemies take 16% increased elemental damage. Now, this is not to be confused by, for example, 50% increased elemental damage. Let's say that this said exactly the same thing. 50% increase, or sorry, 16% increased elemental damage, or nearby enemies take 16% increased elemental damage. It's a little bit confusing, but you can basically think of this as a more multiplier, giving you a big damage boost because it's sort of in a different group. So if I had 2 of these, if I had nearby enemies take 16, and then another with nearby enemies take 16, they would be grouped together. But it's different than the ones on the tree that are just worded like this. It's a little bit confusing in like how all that stuff works, but generally when it says in like that, it's more. So that's really good. And then you also have the damage reduction with nearby enemies deal 8% less elemental damage. The nodes that have been like reworked the most recently is here we have the Sanctuary, which is the Consecrated Ground. And we also have the Consecrated Ground giving you attack speed and cast speed, ailment immunity, 200 energy shield, 6 consoles, and that they linger for 4 seconds. So that is quite nice. And a lot more viable than it used to be. So Inquisitor is actually like a very, very all-round ascendancy where you have the option of going, for example, this early on and then maybe switching to crit later. But even using Inquisitor as a non-crit ascendancy now is extremely strong.
It feels very good early. Like, I think Inquisitor is just it's a very nice powerhouse. On like non-min-max characters, I would say, like gear-wise, because one of the thing, I think the main reason why it fell out of favor is because all the things Inquisitor does, kind of got enabled on every other ascendancy in the game.
True.
In some way, right? Like we have tons of ways to pen. I feel like pen has gotten easier and easier over time.
Yeah, to the point where it's almost a bad thing to be ignoring resist because you can go so far in negative.
Yeah, exactly.
And do remember, you cannot penetrate negative on physical. You cannot overwhelm negatively.
And then secondly, ailment immunity, which used to be a staple in there as well, has become very easy to get as well. I think especially Betrayal, with all the ailment crafts, that made it super easy to just get ailment immune on everything. And people started to like figure that out from Betrayal. And then with the shield charge nerf not being affected as much from attack speed, which was another one of the staples of Inquisitor being the go-to shield charge character of any caster because it had the most easily accessible attack speed through Instruments of Virtue. So there's just been... It's just all the things that it used to excel at, it's just doing mediocrely right now in comparison to everything else, even though it's still like a strong shell.
Yeah. He actually used to be my favorite ascendancy. I'd say Tricksters and then Inquisitor still is my second favorite. But But yeah, let's look a little bit at how we start. So sometimes you'll see some characters like leave the skill tree straight. If the starter nodes aren't particularly good, you'll sometimes see this in some builds.
Yes.
But for us right now, especially early on, you would be taking the elemental damage.
Yeah.
It would
Early
only
on, you have no damage, so these are basically giving you what they say. Like the first node will literally give you, is it 14?
First node, 14, 12, 10, 10, 10.
And so they're gonna
Retribution's
give you
14.
very close to the exact amount of damage. You know, there's gonna be some diminishing returns every time you take a damage node. The next node is gonna feel a little weaker. However, you have so few, so they're all pretty much gonna feel like you're going from like not really like from doing, I don't know, 80% of a monster's life to, oh, I'm one-shotting every time now. Nice.
Yep, pretty much. And then like the start for a lot of elemental characters, and you'll notice this looks very similar for both any witch characters and Templars, but it would look something like this. And then probably pretty quickly going over here to Arcanist Dominion, picking up Heart and Soul and Lightning Walker. Like this is going to look very similar for a lot of Templar builds or witch builds, both in races and just elite starts, pretty much for anything.
The variation here, if you follow streamers and speedrunners, is you will generally always see them take Dark Arts.
Yeah.
Which is something that is, unless you are committed to going, so if you're committed to going dual wielding and you are good at capitalizing on movement skills, it's good. However, if you take these nodes, you are very likely to have to respec out of them as well at some point. And they're not really necessary unless you're going to try and like...
Be very fast?
Yes, be very fast.
Yeah. So the reason why Dark Arts is so powerful is the two travel nodes on the right here that have 30% cooldown recovery of movement speed skills. So that means that you're going to get your smoke bind by faster, your flame dash and stuff like that. And it will, like, it can probably cut off maybe as much as like 30 minutes to an hour of your campaign time. Like quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then obviously Dark Arts itself is a fairly strong node. With attack and cast speed and even more cast speed and then a little bit of mana regen. So you'll very, we would probably both be doing this. And it's also right above Stormweaver, which is a lot of damage as well. So this would probably be what, like, if me and Nugi were doing, this is the starter build. This is probably what we would look like very early on. And then it's not too much of a respec anyway. It's like 2, 4, 6 points.
And it's still within the 20 free respec points that you do have. So these are completely okay to take if you are staying with sort of the overall structure of the skill tree.
Yeah. Then you're also very close to Purity of Flesh, which is then a very, very easy pickup when you do start to feel like you're running out of life. You will notice a lot of racers and people early on will try to skimp out on life nodes, maybe be like, 1,000 life for Kitava, stuff like that. And if you're ever feeling like you're ever following a guide or you're not sure what you're doing, if you feel like you are like almost dying a lot, you're probably close to a lot of life nodes and then just focus a little bit less on damage. Another really big tip for playing any spell build is that remember you get so much power just from the level of your gem. So say that you've gotten pretty much to Innocence, but you feel like you're a little bit low on damage, maybe over level there all the way to like level 44 or 46, getting 1 or 2 more levels on your gem is going to like give you such a big advantage compared to the monsters of where you are. Whereas if you are like a bow or a melee skill, actually using weapons to scale your damage, then you aren't going to have the same advantage.
Yeah, just keeping track of your skill gems while you're leveling is a good idea.
Yeah. Right, where should we go next? Now we have to decide, are we going down to Marauder to get more life, or are we going to go over to Shadow to get more damage? Now generally if we were a crit build, we don't really have that much of a choice here. We're going to end up with slightly less life, and we're kind of forced to go over here to get things like Assassination and to be closer to Throat Seeker and other crit nodes.
Okay, so I would say, if it was me making this build as my league starter, I would say if I went down to Marauder, I would lose out on too much in the more immediate, kind of future. So what I would do is I would take as many life nodes that are currently around me, and then I would take some AoE, maybe some cast speed. I would
True.
actually.
We take
I would.
amplify.
Where amplify? Yes, yeah. I would say consolidate early on, take power nodes early on, and then you can like respec once you get more points to play around with, so you can do that travel without losing out too much.
Wonder if Divine Judgment's just always worth it early now. The 50 LE damage is just so big, even if you're not taking anything with conversion.
Another thing is that I would say you're probably gonna be struggling a little bit on Dex. So I
Wait,
would
why?
say
It's not a dex skill.
no. But there's like, you barely have anything right now. Any
Yeah.
like item that requires any kind of Dex you can't wield.
I can
So
take
if you
30
have,
dex agility if I need to.
yeah, just have that in mind. There's also the cast speed
Precision.
and the movement speed is really
Yeah.
good.
A lot of people that need dex while leveling, actually, most racers are going to take this anyway, just for the 5%
Yes.
movement speed. But grabbing this node is really, really good. Especially
Yeah.
on an Inquisitor, you're going most likely to be... Actually, yeah, we could like get rid of Dark Hearts if we're doing Instruments of Virtue first. A lot of people do like picking up Sanctuary into Pious Path early, because that means that once you get your Cruel Ascendancy, very hard to die during the campaign once you have Pious Path. Like the 200 energy shield regen is insane. So you will see a lot of people grab that. Even if you only have like 100 energy shield, it actually makes such a big difference. And yeah, very few things are going to kill you.
To give a little bit of a reference here, if you have 2,000 life, regenning, and I know this is very basic, but it'll give you more an appreciation. You have 2,000 life, which is enough to basically go through the campaign. Maybe you want a little bit more on hardcore, but that's 10% life regen
per second. Yep. So
that's
it's, and that's just as a free buffer from one ascendancy thing that already grants you a lot of other things. So it is actually like, especially early on, very, very good defense. I always feel like, especially for doing boss killing and super in-game things, I never feel like I have enough defense on Inquisitor for hardcore.
Yeah.
I'm like not super comfortable. For early on though, it's so tanky. But yeah, so I think next up we could go for example, Divine Judgment, Path on the lower one, because that has penetration, and obviously we're not using Inevitable Judgment. We can go up here for Deep Wisdom, grabbing Blast Radius. And I quite like taking Cruel Preparation early, because sometimes I feel like especially if I'm being greedy and not helping Illyria, a little extra resist is nice.
Yeah, I generally take. So this is what I meant with take everything powerful close early.
Also, a lot of people really like taking Mind or Matter.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of it. I usually don't take it on day one at all. Nugi takes it a lot.
No, I don't. I
Used
actually started migrating out of Mind over Matter a lot earlier than most people. Yes, I have. This has not been a favor of mine for a long time.
I don't use it ever. I just got more damage. Just don't get hit.
Ever?
I've had like 1 or 2 mom characters in the last like year.
No, but I'm like, the last time I used this for any like early character, unless I was actually going M1, was like a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. Rice loves it.
I think especially now when you have like stuff like Flesh and Stone as well, like you can just turn up Mind, it's just so much better.
Yeah, I prefer Flesh and Stone. But you do have the option to go Mind or Matter. You could sacrifice like Herald of Thunder or Herald of Ice or something while leveling, and you can get a decent amount of defense there for 1 point. So the option is there, and obviously you do have more mana because of Heart and Soul. I definitely probably wouldn't invest into like Deep Thoughts and things like that.
I think the one time I still would take MOM would be if I'm setting up like an Archmage character,
right?
Early on with like what's it called, the Ascendancy Hierophant. I mean, if I'm going Hierophant Archmage, I'm taking MOM.
That makes sense. So now we do have the nodes up here, like the Heart and Thunder and Breath of Lightning. I am not a massive fan of any of these. Like the Ice, Fire, and Cold ones. Ice, Fire, and Lightning ones. I never take like any of these.
Fire, I think, can be okay because it's like straight up.
Traveling point, right?
Yeah. And Ignite builds as well. The Breath of, what's the other one? The right one is actually very strong. if you're going.
Yeah.
It's just Ignite is kind of weak right now, but you know,
Yeah.
for those few builds, I think you can justify it. I think the cold and ice or the
The
cold and
cold one's
lightning
good for
ones.
cold dot.
Yeah,
And
but
it's kind of
then
mandatory, and then you can take both.
do you go there early? I know a lot of
I
people
haven't
do
played
Thread of
Vortex
Hope.
in a year or two.
I know they all take Breath of Hope, and then they do the large one that travels all the way around and gets the one on the side as well in the middle. So they get those two up there, and then they get the fire cold one.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, so they get like
Snowforged?
that. Yeah, so they get like a massive, like so many good notes right there with a Thread of
Yeah.
Hope.
Oh, Thread of Hope. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thread
yeah,
Hope's
yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that's when I see them being used, at least
So
recently.
we do have the options of grabbing things like mental rapidity and just more cast speed. We don't really know yet how good cast speed is going to be with it, or if you're going to use Unleash, Spell Echo. We don't really know all those things. I think Spell Echo, or I mean, Unleash could look hilarious with it.
Yes. It might even be good.
Yeah.
I think if you manage to get I could see the Unleash build working with, so I can see it working with, what's it called? Impulse Storm's Gift. Because then you don't have to clear too much.
Yeah.
You don't have to like recast.
Yep. Now, a lot of people have been asking about cluster jewels and stuff like that. So there are strong cluster jewels for most things. The problem right now is that we've just lost Harvest. And they haven't given us any information yet on and first of all, this is like we're thinking League starter right now, so obviously you don't have access to cluster jewels. But even if you do, getting a crafted and a good crafter jewel is very hard without Harvest. It was hard with Harvest. So yeah, it's just like incredibly hard to actually get one that is good. In Delirium itself is very easy. You would stop like 50 alterations on a jewel. Boom, dude. New skill tree. Perfect jewel. Let's go. Now it's like, 3,000 alterations. I haven't hit it once. Yeah.
Okay. Like from here on out, where do we want to go?
Yeah. So
here is kind of like where this is where you kind of have to decide what your end game build is going to start looking like. Are you going to be any kind of hybrid, any like mix between life and ES? Then you stay top right side. Are you going to go more of a pure life build? Then you're probably going to go down left. Also, are you going to get block? You probably want to. So you probably want to get to glancing blows, which is probably going to end up helping you dictate where you want to go now, because now you're already going down a little bit. So now the life nodes seem even better to get because you're even closer now.
yeah. A lot of people also probably wonder about mana and how do you keep your mana. Early on day one, like obviously there has been things in the past like leech on boots and stuff that you could get that would be great for fixing mana issues. It's not really there anymore. They've removed it. And yeah, quick recovery actually does help quite a lot with mana as well. A lot of people will run a fairly low clarity so that you're costing a gem slot but not a lot of mana and still getting like some base mana. That helps a lot. A lot of people will very early on run a mana flask until they get to maps, and at some point it'll just start feeling okay. Also things like mana on kill from like you have nodes like Soul Siphon, you have Mind Drinker and stuff like that. Those are generally okay for clearing. Boot enchant, it's 30 or 50 or 70% increased mana recovery if you've cast the spell recently, stuff like that. As far as like Eldritch Battery and stuff, I haven't ever used that. I'm not a big fan.
EB is very hard to take advantage of.
So many trouble nodes.
Yeah, but it also gives you free reign of your what's it called? Of your mana pool. So if you ever liked an MOM build, and MOM builds are strong, the moment you pair it with EB, you use your what's it called? You use your ES as your mana instead, and then you can completely reserve all your mana. So if you're a low mana pool build, but you would like to split the damage between two sides, so okay, let's say that you are a hybrid build with an overhead of ES and then the life under. You take the damage on the ES first, right? And it becomes very hard to recover that amount of the ES once you start taking damage. So let's say you have a reasonable amount of ES recovery. Well, if you only take 30% of your total damage on that pool, you can kind of keep it topped off more of the time. And if you then also have life leech under it always running because you have some kind of leech, you don't want to have to lose all the ES before you can start leeching. So
well, you do have Pious Path on Inquisitor.
Yes.
So it is an option. I'm still not a huge fan of it, but
no, yeah. I'm not a huge fan of it either. It's just like when you think about it, there are some benefits of going that way. It's just hard to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Very few builds I've seen and very few builds I've tried have managed to do so. But there are some thought there.
Yeah.
I'm
a big fan over Arcane Expanse and Intensity with the intensity changes coming, because Intensity +1 is going to be stronger.
What are they doing with it?
They're lowering the base intensity by 1 and increasing all the buffs. So getting plus intensity is going to be even stronger than before.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And then you have Arcane Expanse, which is, we're going to be using an area skill. Well, most likely an area skill. So we kind of really want to go over here. This could also be an Anoint if you don't want to go over here. I did the same thing with Volatile Dead Spellslinger where I anointed Undertaker, which is like insanely strong. But yeah, Intensity is basically a skill where you get AoE on the or you get a lot of AoE just for having it there, but then it loses AoE and focuses in power while you're standing still and shooting. So you're basically, whenever you're clearing, you'll have more AoE and clear speed, at the cost of like not having a little bit more damage. And then while standing still and just right clicking on the enemy, so for single target, you'll get a lot more damage, but you'll lose AoE. So I think now, if we're already going to be over here with Intensity, then we definitely want to grab Molding, we want to grab Written in Blood, and we want to go and grab some of the Shadow Nodes as well.
Yeah, if you're already committed to going to that far to the right, now we're basically saying no to the bottom side of the skill tree.
Yeah. So right now, I'm only level 75, but I also see that I only have 170% life. That's where I start going a little bit like, oof, that's not like that much. I generally aim for my builds having like 200, 220. So I do want to find...
This build does have a lot of 2-slot jewel nodes.
Yeah. So
it has 4 already it can get.
Yeah, so we can get jewel here, 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 and here, all for 7% life on each jewel. And then we are at level 83. Now, obviously, in SSF, getting life jewel nodes is a bit annoying. So generally, I prefer that my builds don't have to rely on jewels. Jewels are insanely strong, though. But we can go around here. There. Now we have 194% life without jewels, and then we can get up to 220 with jewels. So that is pretty decent at level 93. Yeah. And then I would basically be filling in the jewels as I get jewels that are good enough to use.
And you would pretty solid. Also now you would start specking out of some nodes, like the dual wielding node, for instance. You would not have anymore at this point. Yeah. You would probably have glancing blows instead, and the life nodes down there as well come with it as well.
Yeah. So
there's one thing this is missing right now, which is layered defense.
Yep. But now, especially if we want to have Sanctuary as well, we're starting to like run out a little bit of skill points. Without Sanctuary, we're level 95, and that would be good for the natural progression of the build. We could also skimp out on the Blood Drinker nodes here on the right. So we do have like some freedom of what to take. Without Blood Drinker, these nodes are a little bit wasted as well. So we do have like some options here. So we could be like level 85. Archmage might be really good for this build. We simply don't know everything until we see like the tags, the amount of like damage effectiveness and stuff like that. If it has good damage effectiveness, I would be surprised. I'm gonna guess anywhere from like 40 to 80 damage effectiveness. If it's higher than 80, I'm going Archmage.
I want to caution a little bit against any kind of self-cast Archmage that does not have lingering damage. So the builds that you've previously seen that are really good with Archmage is Cremation and what's it called? Stormbrand. What else have we seen that's like really good? Like Blade Vortex, I guess. I've seen some builds.
Mm-hmm.
But like generally what you see is lingering damage builds. So that means that after you've cast your skill...
Yeah, Ball Lightning.
Ball Lightning, yes, but even Ball Lightning is... I mean, it's good, but it does feel a little weird.
And somebody asks, how do you tell damage effectiveness? It tells you on the gem. So we look at Blade Blast here, you'll see effectiveness of added damage is 60%. It's the line right above the quality. And somebody in chat asked, why are you going Elemental Overload on a crit build? Well, we already said this is not a crit build. We can change into crit later, but right now we have nothing to do with crit at all.
The thing is, like, right now, if you look at our items, items right now...
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and you can see we have none. That means we haven't found items with high crit chance. So I would say you don't really... It's hard to capitalize on crit before you actually get some of the, you know, the early crit nodes. Or the early crit gear, because you can get 100% increased spell crit on both your weapon and your shield, and it makes such a big difference to having high enough crit chance.
Let's see, what are we doing? Wrath, Herald of Thunder. Little bit YOLO, live a little. Stormcall, I put in Control Destruction, Lightning Penetration, Intensify, Elemental Focus, and Conk Effect. So we have a decent like single target there. So Stormcall is currently instead of Cracking Lance. I think that's like what we think is the most similar or best to simulate with. Obviously, we don't have Cracking Lance.
I think something is missing here, which is Spell Echo.
Instead of Pen?
I wouldn't do it instead of Pen. Control Destruction. This gives you way better EO as well.
Sure.
That's something to consider as well, by the way, if you are making your characters. Yeah, you can go Unleash as well. But Control Destruction can actually be a... what's the word? A detriment to your build, because it can make it very hard to have consistent EO, and you'll feel that you're not...
But when you're using Spell Echo, you're not getting Intensify stacks.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe not that combination. I mean, I feel like there's so many combinations we can go with here, and this is
Faster
where
casting might feel really good.
I would not go faster casting on an Inquisitor.
Yeah, true. Anyway, we would have to like wait to see everything to like fully know.
This is where there's just so many different...
Just throw added lightning in there for now.
Sure.
It doesn't really matter what the 6th link is, and it also doesn't have to be a perfect setup.
No. I do think that so in terms of, should you go, what's it called, Unleash or Spell Echo or Intensify, or what should you go? Different skills will be strong with different setups. The reason why people go, if you went Archmage, you'd probably go Unleash, because you only have to cast one time and you get extra casts out of it. So that's what people generally do with Ball Lightning, I assume, is that they go Unleash Ball Lightning. So that for every single cast they do that is very expensive, they get a lot of total damage per cast.
Also, a lot of people are saying you can go AoE overlap in Stormcall with Spellcasted. Again, we are not playing Stormcall. This is Crackling Lance. We're just using it to simulate. Calm down. Right, let's see. Is there anything else we need? We have Flame Dash with Arcane Surge, Wrath, Herald of Thunder, Stormcall, and again, the setup itself doesn't matter. And you can see we already have 114,000 DPS with not a single item as well.
Yeah.
And also nothing in the config. So that's already shaping up to like, that wouldn't be like too bad with nothing.
Right. The hard part here, if you go non-crit, is scaling the damage even further. This is where this will take you into like yellow maps, high yellows. Going into reds with this will be difficult. Now we need to start looking at gear, looking at optimizing. Going yellow maps can be done fairly unoptimized. I would say if it's your first character, going into like normal maps is probably going to be the first thing you wanna look at, and then making it to yellows. And then if you really want to make it to reds, you have to start, kind of optimizing, making sure your gear is right, making sure the tree is right and everything.
Yeah. Let's see, fossilized. I hate that I can't search for all the shields I want. Shield.
I do think as a new player, I think it's important to have enough damage. We can talk all about the defense and everything once we start min-maxing, but there's nothing worse than not having enough damage.
Yep.
I think that's one of the worst feelings. So that's why you don't want to spread yourself too thin, but rather just take good damage nodes where you are. Because then at least you can kill the thing and move on.
Let's see, anyone just use a tabular early. So I always like simulate with dog shit stuff, and then if it looks decent with dog shit, then it's gonna be great.
Yes.
And I never bother like simulating actual resists. It's pointless. Doesn't help me. We're gonna do Jade Amulet.
Also make sure whenever you look at, so if you look at if people are doing the whole show power nodes, one thing that's important to remember is that show power, if you have, let's say that you have two different clusters, right? One gives you like 1 or 2% more damage than the other one. However, let's say that the other cluster that you're looking at is the area of effect plus area damage node, right? And then you decide to not take the area of effect. Any secondary effect that a node can have is very much worth looking into, as it can vastly improve different builds. And AoE especially is very, very good, especially once you start getting other secondary effects that also scale with AoE, and you just have everything kind of scaling off it. So if your Explosion Chest, Impulsa, Stormskift, I don't know if Stormskift actually gets benefited.
I'm not sure. Also, a Sulfur Flask can be really, really good on day 1 to add with some extra damage. Nothing's gonna kill you in tier 1 to 5 maps. Pretty much.
And it's actually pretty useful for recovering some life.
Well, we already get that for free.
Oh, that's true. That is true. We are Inquisitor. Just overall, this can be like, it's good for like anyone basically.
There, and then the best prefix for Flask is Chemist. It's like what lets you have the most uptime on Flasks.
Yeah.
And then you want Bleed, Curse, and Freeze immunity is like the most important ones.
We are Inquisitor.
True. Okay, well, normally. In fact, in
Yeah.
this, you can get percentage armor, percentage evasion. Later on, when you get Katarina Flasks, you can get that. You do want Bleed immunity.
Yes. I think the most important one early on is Bleed.
Yeah, 100%. Let's see.
And then the second best one, I would say, in terms of just feeling nice. Well, there's like two. So one is for speed and one is for just overall feel goodness. So obviously the speed would be getting a Quicksilver with Adrenaline.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I would say Freeze immunity. It's just really nice, especially if you like opening boxes. So you can always just freeze immune the box. So you never get stuck.
There, so let's just say, because this is for starters, I normally do 1 slot or 2 slot jewels. I never go for like 3 stat and 4 stat jewels. You'll see a lot of people in their league starters, they have like opal rings, they have 4 stat jewels. It's like, okay, I go for 2 stats. Like life and 1 damage, that's like actually pretty easy to get, even on SSF.
It did get harder.
Yeah.
I've been very frustrated after they added the extra, when they added all the poison, bleed, and all that crap, all the affixes. My life just I don't know. My life quality just went down just by a little bit. The frustration that I've had trying to get a life jewel sometimes is just
Are we gonna get frenzy charges on this? We could run Blood Rage. I'm a big fan of that. But most people aren't.
Blood Rage.
Yeah. A lot of people.
I'll tell you the one thing that you need to remember is that you will never have an overhead of ES anymore, because you're gonna.
Can you not
That's just
regen it?
gone. You can maybe get
200 is quite a lot.
Yeah, well, it works early on. Once you get enough life, it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Well, we could also do Herald of Ice Assassin's Mark. I wonder if that's even going to give us enough to... No, never mind. I mean, we can do Herald of Ice Bite.
Mm-hmm.
That also could be enough.
Yeah, and then we freeze as well, which is nice.
Let's try that.
So we can't use LA Focus, though.
Yeah, then we do have to get rid of it. Sad times! And sometimes I'll even put in added cold damage just to get more shudders. And that actually can be a really, really good way of dealing with corpses on day 1 or 2. And then later doing Call of the Brotherhood. Yeah, fuck it. Let's say that we actually did that. It's not an optimal damage setup, though. What else can we do? Someone's saying that Spell Echo does work with Intensify. I kind of want to go check now. How do you use Intensify much? Mostly just on Contagion.
Remember to show people the potion as well. They should use for mana.
Wait, I'm using Intensify. Oh, Enduring? Right, yeah.
Yeah. This is... So anyone, any aspiring hand caster should be familiar with the glory that is the...
They probably just misunderstood and said that it doesn't work. Like, if you're casting, it doesn't give you 2. It'll give you 1.
Ah, okay.
But that's still fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. So we can use Spell Echo. Excellent. But yeah, as Nugiyen was saying, Mana Flask, Enduring Mana Flask, which I think I have in-game actually. But the way it works is that even though I'm on full mana, it'll still let me use it and it won't cancel. You can't like chain it like you could before. Before you could like spam click it and it would work for like a minute or like 10 minutes.
It was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. But at least like you can still use it now as part of your normal rotation without worrying about if you're full mana or not. So that's really good for a lot of like early mana issues, the Enduring Flask. But yeah, let's see. So I have some like pretty garbage gear here. We have a Scepter with basically 90 or yeah, almost 100 spell damage / elemental damage, including the implicit. Low lightning damage to spells. And again, later on when we're crit, oh yeah, we're not even crit. We're like barely ever gonna have frenzy charges. I probably would go Blood Rage just to be greedy. Just to get Frenzy. We're also going to have Onslaught. We will get that either from a Searching Eye with Onslaught roll on it. That's normally how I do it. And until then, I would use a Silver Flask. So we have that there. And then, what else? Are we going to have everything? We're on Consecrated Ground. Pretty much always. And here, now we're going to go start seeing the effects of part of our Ascendancy. So... we're going to be moving with Shield Charge at this point. Also using Flame Dash to get over things. And we most likely, we've killed recently. Doesn't do anything. We've attacked recently. We're always doing that. And we've always cast a spell.
And you should take the boss as well. The boss one.
We'll do standard boss. Because this is like super early on. So we're not going to be killing Shaper or anything with this gear. We have a 2-stat Scepter.
Sure. It's just like, it's whenever you compare damage, generally people compare it against the same boss setup so that you know what we're looking at. It's easy to compare when everyone uses the same resist.
Yeah. So right now in our build we can get up to 5 intensity. Were they reducing that as well? So it's going to be 4 intensity, but it's going to be stronger. So it'll probably be, I think it'll actually probably be this a little bit above 5, but instead of putting it at 6, we're going to put it at 5. So now against the boss with garbage gear, and again, we don't know 100%. Stormcall's just an indication. We don't know 100% that it's going to be similar to this. But with this garbage gear, this is like super obtainable day 1 gear. We would already have 500,000 damage against the standard boss. And against like something like Shaper Guardian, 400,000 damage. So whenever we're doing builds like this,
that we can stand still and intensify and not die while standing still.
And we do have protection while standing still now with all the new utilities. We have the dome, We have the new rune
Yeah.
as well. So we have a lot of things that can probably pump our damage up to closer to 600,000 against even Shaper with this garbage gear. So yeah, it's pretty decent. And somebody said day one maybe make it a 5 link, but no, there's like this tabby is completely justifiable. So
Yeah.
as day one, like obviously we would probably be how much would be in day one? Like 85. So we would have like 5.5k life, maybe a few nodes missing, but it looks like something that could be a very, very solid character. You won't have all your buffs up against Shaper. No, I also wouldn't be going against the Shaper on Hardcore SSF with a Scepter with 57 spell damage, 107 lightning dispels, and a Tabula Rasa.
You wanna so this is where you wanna manage your expectations of what kind of content you're going against. So can I have most of my buffs off for all the bosses, and will I have enough damage to maintain the buffs within that period of time? And the answer here is probably yes.
Yeah. Like most people at
Guardians, maybe no. And
Yeah.
you'll have to like reconsider a few things, but
like this would be like level 85-ish, and we'd probably, let's just say we're like missing this bit, right? That's level, oh, it's actually perfectly 85. Let's say that we just haven't gotten to the shadow bit. We're level 85. We have fairly garbage gear, and the build already versus, like, obviously we wouldn't be fighting Shaper, but against the standard boss, it looks really solid. You will not have level 20 gems too. You are actually correct.
that's true.
We would have level 19 at this
You
point.
have just about enough to feel okay for the earlier guardians as well. Like,
Yeah.
you'll feel fine. If you
Oh,
know
and
how
we would have a curse. That's true.
true.
Would be self-casting a curse versus bosses.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, so it's not a like perfect simulation, but it gives us a nice indication that with this garbage gear, this looks really, really nice. And this is all super obtainable. This is like something me and Nugi and other players would have in the first like 6 to 8 hours. And then like obviously it depends. Well, maybe not Uber Ascendancy in the first 8 hours. I think Harvest was probably a record for me where I did Uber Lab 11 or 10 hours into the league.
Yeah, it's fast.
Yeah. But generally, like this is a by what we're looking at right now, we're seeing that it's it looks pretty viable. Oh yeah, we could do Wave of Conviction exposure as well. So
It's a good thing.
we could do Wave of Conviction, Curse on hit, added lightning.
Yeah, you can do all that.
Connectivity. That would be even more damage. There. So let's say that we are exposure type lightning. Now we're at 575,000 damage. Wait, pen doesn't work on Inquisitor? No, it does. You're Anyway, if you have inevitable judgment, yes, pen does nothing. We don't have inevitable judgment.
Non-crit.
We're non-crit, and then you have the option of changing to crit later.
Yeah, we're just showing off what maybe an early crackling lightning Inquisitor would look like just a fast variation if you had to make something.
Yeah, and this was just to give an example of how me or Nugi would like look through a build and like try to solve some problems. This is not the optimal crackling lance build for heist, right? We don't know anything about any of that yet.
However, if we were making crackling lance, something like this is like there's a very good chance that we would make this tree.
Yeah, the tree
for that,
gems we might be playing around with.
Yes. And you also want to set up your like this is again where planning comes in. You wanna set up more of your like what kind of cost and damage thing are you setting up? Are you using Enduring Cry? All these like what's my movement skill gonna be as well? You wanna like make sure you have all of that planned out.
Yeah. So yeah, that was just like an intro to like build creation, and hopefully it gave somebody some ideas on how we go about things. And again, the Stormcall is a simulation for Crackling Lance. The main thing that we would be waiting for there, we would want the updated skill tree and the patch notes. And I'm guessing we get that tomorrow, or probably tomorrow, where we get gem info, showing us exactly how much that Crackling Lance is going to be.
Gem info?
Well, it always comes before patch notes, and patch notes is the day after.
What's that?
Yeah, patch notes on Tuesday. Can you
I don't
explain the
know.
PoB community fork versus regular? I think the community fork is just better in every way now. It's just exclamation mark fork in my channel.
If anyone uses, if you have the capacity to, manage to download PoB, just get fork as well.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't use PoB without fork. It's
the gems are after patch notes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You thought right.
Yeah.
And yeah, we
Okay.
do have the option of going CI with this build later. We have the option of going crit.
Yep.
And Inquisitor does have a lot of options. It's never going to be like the tankiest boss killer, but this would be like a really, really good softcore character.
If you're starting out, I would say this being fairly generic, fairly simple is probably something I would go for first. Then I would look into, okay, could I go CI with it instead? Could I go Archmage with it instead? Could I go, X, Y, and Z? But those are harder to pull off, I would say.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that was a pretty solid introduction to build creation. So I think we'll end it there. I want to give a big thank you to Nugi for joining us today. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and follow, subscribe on both Nugi's channel, his dog's channel, his cat's channel, everything like that. Thank you so much for joining us, Nugi. Let's give a big clap and a big yep. Give this POB. Sure, we can export the POB. I mean,
Sure.
doesn't really. Sure. There, it's in chat. I'll just spam it in chat a little bit. Maybe Mariki can save it and we can put it with the video just for people watching on YouTube too. So, Nugi, where can people find more of Nugi content?
Well, if you spell out the entire thing and then plop it into Google or anywhere, it's me, Nugiyen.
Nice. Awesome. And Nugi's going to be streaming after this as well, so I'll host after ending. Mira wants to do some MTX giveaway, so we'll be doing that after.
We PvPing?
Oh, we can PvP. We can end it on the PvP. Challenge me. I'm ready.
I'm gonna die.
I hope so. I don't know. I might get one shot with RF on.
Let's see.
You're level 99 though.
Yeah, but you have all that gear.
Wait, I have the wrong gem in.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Unlucky.
Oh no, auras.
Oh no,
wait.
auras. Ah! Wait, I
I
should
just realized I have Purity of Fire.
What? Wait, Purity of Fire? Oh.
Kinda unfair. I just realized I don't think you can kill me.
Why?
The Purity of Fire.
Oh, because you're way overcapped?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not
I
fair.
have 170.
Oh, I have 100.
Oh, you can. I think you can kill me with potions not up. Oh, yeah, you can.
Ah, Pog. Wow, winning POV now.
Oh.
Round 4.
Can I explode yours? No.
Oh, you have so much damage.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh shit, I wasn't even running RF.
I think it's the resist that kind of.
Yeah, you can't penetrate it, I think. Oh.
Oh, I should move more.
Yeah, because even with flammability, I have 150.
Yeah, I got 102. What do I have with endurance charges? 120. How much damage do you have on your Blade Blast?
Without anything, 102,000. Oh, that's with one inspiration charge. 61,000. And then with
double my
Namahu, huh?
You double my damage.
And then I can turn on RF, and then I have 86,000 slash 135.
Wait, how much on the blade blast?
Yeah.
Wait, how much on the?
With it depends with Namhu's flame advance up or not, but 86 slash 135,000. So 135k with it up.
Okay, you have 4 times my damage.
I min-maxed your build, bro. Couldn't have done it without you.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
But
I'm
yeah.
surprised that. I guess it just breaks the life on
The
hit.
Purity of Fire is so strong as well. I just have an additional like
Yeah.
20 damage mitigation.
That is very true.
But yeah, we're gonna end it here. So thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the class, and a big thank you to Nugi for helping teach this class as well. So yeah, thanks so much, and try to die less than I do. Let's wave. Let's wave goodbye.